back to Fabiano Caruana and Magnus Carlsen. He elected to go for the queen, and this means a trade of queens in the end, while he did still manage to snap up that pawn. Do we read into that X at all, or is that lying to us?
Oh, I don't know. It does feel like maybe he traded on Magnus's terms here, because now Magnus gets the move. It feels like maybe the queens would have come off anyway, since there was huge tension along the b-file. But by taking with the bishop, he could have dropped it back. Maybe if a queen trade had happened, the white rook would just be on a slightly better square. Also, I'm slightly biased, having watched so many Magnus games. I'm so used to seeing Magnus win in endgames, Tanya. Keeping the queens on, it's the only way to beat him, defeat him, to keep more tension.
Yeah, even with 2 extra pawns, you can't call this a complete advantage for white, just simply because Magnus is on the other side. And of course, the e5 pawn is soft as well. But I want to also come back to the dynamics of those opposite color complex bishops that we bring up so often. And I think in this endgame, that's something that Fabi will rely on. You earlier had pointed out that f7 spot. Bring the knight out, bring the bishop back, bring the rook, line it up against that weakness with no light squared bishop from Magnus Carlsen. Yes, the Magnus magic happens in an endgame. Yes, there's a vintage Magnus that always comes into play and grinds it out and saves difficult position, but I still believe that Fabi will push this out. And you know what? I think he gets this done. That's my prediction in this one. Bishop c4, knight e3, rook f1, and I'm loving white's chances here.
That's what you think. Let's see what Judah Polgar and Peter Lecko think when it comes to this top ticket bout. He had 2 decisions to make. Was it capturing with the bishop first on that pawn or the queen? I asked David, should we read into that X? I'll ask you the same thing. Did he make the right choice or the wrong choice?
Well, there are a lot of things happen in the last few moves. Later on, we might get back to that very important point. But now, of course, all those moves which Tanya just mentioned, bishop c4, knight e3, all those are extremely logical because the f7 pawn can be a weakness. At the same time, there is maybe a much better move, which is not so easy and obvious, but I think Fabi will play it, which is?
Yes, and I think we should head to the players. I want to see them. I want to catch that in camera, because here going e5, e6 is the key to break black's structure. That's the way how white can really cement his advantage. If white is just playing this bishop c4, knight e3 natural moves, actually, black maintains the structure and will have very good drawing chances. So I think that is a super important moment. This breaking that f takes e6 will be played, and then we slowly play this long terms, because then in long run this pawn, if it moves to e5, then black's bishop on h8 will be dead. Yeah, that's kind of the strategical transformation, that how do you do that. And exactly the same thematic, just very quickly, that if Magnus would have played the move after ed3, knight d4, which was so natural, it would have also run into this fantastic e6 pawn sacrifice. That was the problem. And after f takes e6, knight e3, not only black's king is in trouble long terms, but also the pawn structure is compromised. So Magnus sensed it. That's why he played knight e7, which was a very strong move. Queen b5, bishop b5. Here was an absolutely stunner idea by the computer to sacrifice another pawn with a6, bishop takes a6, knight c6, maintaining the stability and playing for compensation, but this is just completely from another planet. And by this time, we see that Fabi has missed the chance to play e6, and Magnus, I believe, will hold this game.
Okay, so we are waiting for Fabi to play his move. Is he going to be making? No, he did not play.
Yeah, he did not play. Yeah, he played knight e3 and bishop e5 castles, king g7 on the board. And I believe that Magnus will get away with it. His strategy will work because Fabi missed that incredible e6 push.
Yeah, this is what it is, and it's a complicated game, even now without playing e6, but of course black has amazing bishop on e5, controlling so many important squares. And now g4 is a move which I'm not sure Fabi is so happy about. Maybe now he thinks maybe I should have been playing g3, but let's see how it unfolds. Back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Judith and Peter. Still a complicated position in play. It is a small material advantage, at least for the time being here for Fabiano, up a pawn in total. Again, can he convert? This would be the time to do it. You still have a small clock advantage over Magnus Carlsen. You seem to have had him on the back foot for the entirety of the game. I would be thinking in Fabiano's shoes right now, this is where I have to strike. This is where I have to take the advantage early against Magnus and then hold him off for the remainder of the best of four.
Exactly, that's the plan. That's what he's focused in on now. But his best chances might have passed firstly, in that middle game. Secondly, now we've seen e6. It looked so clear, so strong, so powerful. But he did miss that opportunity. And Magnus is only 1 or 2 moves away from consolidating now. He'll put a pawn on f6. He'll move his rooks across somewhere. Still some hard work to be done. But White's pawns are all so weak, it's hard to imagine at least a decisive advantage in the near future. Black now will be forced to just defend the pawn with his rook, take a timeout. And a lot of hard work to be done. If Fabi's going to win this, he's going to have to do it the hard way. Long, long grind ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you look at worst place pieces in these kind of positions, right? Your knight's looking really great, the rook and bishop lined up. The only piece that you'd want to get into play if you're Fabiano is the other rook. Whether you choose the E line or maybe the longer route via B1 and B7, trying to infiltrate on the 7th rank would be a plan to try to at least get that grind started at some point. Eyeing the idea that hopefully when Magnus's knight moves up to defend, it might give the d5 square for one of the pieces to land on after knight c6, knight d5. Just the defense structure for Magnus, I wonder how hard is it? Is it hard for Magnus to keep this under control? And is that more difficult than, well, Fabi trying to find a way ahead?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just have a feeling that Magnus is actually got more than just safety in mind here.
Oh, wow.
Played these types of positions so many times. He's got a very stable bishop. I mean, he could be looking for imbalances if he removes the white bishop. I mean, White's pawns, they're so weak. He's riddled with weak pawns here. He does play your move, Tanya. Very strong, very good idea to activate the rook. But I don't know. I think Magnus, in his mind, feels he's at least fine. At some point, he might even go away with his rook, plant his bishop in the center instead. And yeah, we'll see. Maybe a draw, the most likely result. Fabiano's still 1 pawn up, but I'm not ruling out that third result. Not just yet.
Wow. You know, and I love this about these situations, that so much of it is around the fact that it's Magnus Carlsen playing with the black pieces. You know, any other player, and we just think that Fabi's going to grind this down. You know, it might take him a couple of moves, well, not a couple, but maybe a lot of moves, but he'll do it. He's definitely a favorite. But then you see the guy sitting opposite him. We know what he's capable of in end games, and suddenly, even in this position, it's fair to say that it's a game for 3 results. Only against Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, and Magnus Carlsen's body language indicates the same thing. Earlier, maybe just feeling uncomfortable in the board state. Now, he's a little bit more at attention here.
And the clock's also very much leveled out right now. Magnus on the think. You know, we often say that once you're in the end game, going down on the clock maybe isn't that much of a factor, but this kind of an endgame, with the dynamics of the opposite color bishop, an extra pawn for Fabi, both players looking for their chances, I think the clock could potentially be the decisive factor here in just a couple of moments.
Very likely, and Magnus is the one to go into an over 1 minute think now. 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes against 2.5 minutes. The knight does move indeed, as we predicted. Maybe come to the edge of the board to destabilize the bishop. Maybe if the black bishop moves, the knight could replace it later.
What I really want to do is get my knight on d5, but that g4 pawn hanging is just extremely annoying.
Yeah, White will have to at some point take a timeout to defend that pawn, to activate the knight. Does he do it now? Jumping into the position doesn't feel correct here, because I think that Black can simply ignore that and just start moving on over with his knight.
Very often in these kind of positions, one can also see a bunch of trades happen that just neutralizes it very quickly. And I think the line that you pointed out with the rook moving forward, attacking pawns, the knight coming ahead, might be one of those scenarios then. So how ambitious is Fabi feeling? Will he go for a direct approach where we'll see a flurry of trades, but his advantage slipping away? He does bring the king forward. Not very committal.
Yeah, that's a useful move. It's just whether it's the most useful move in the position. The g4 pawn will still be hanging if the white knight is ever deflected away. Magnus frees up his rook. No longer tied down, protecting a pawn. Very cagey stuff. There we go. Fabiano, this feels like the last few moments of calm before the flurry begins, both on the board and the clock.
And to your point, Tanya, not that Fabiano is this type of player, but the one thing you have to avoid here is a mistake akin to what Noterbeck made yesterday against Magnus Carlsen, right? Feeling like, okay, at some point I have to take a risk to win, and that risk you take ends up flipping the game on its head and spelling disaster for you and your chances overall. So if this one, while it had good chances for you at one point, no longer affords you those opportunities, don't overreach. Don't grasp for what is no longer, reachable for you. Get out of this one, move on to the next, look for your winning chances again there.
Exactly, and that's where experience plays out so much, right? In those clutch moments, what kind of decisions are you taking? And for Noterbeck, again, it was the fire of ambition that made him play that rook move that he did, which cost him an entire point and cost him the semi-finals matchup. Fabiano Caruana, on the other hand, he's been a big stage player for more than a decade. He knows these clutch moments, he knows these critical moments extremely well and has the ability to pull the brakes when needed, understands the practicality of decision making. So I think if it comes down to that, he would be able to handle it. These two players have the blueprint of what it takes to be in a World Championship final.
Okay, the black rook does centralize. Black is still lacking a plan. The only plan I can really see is to perhaps eliminate the white bishop, which holds everything together. But Magnus hasn't gone for it yet. And now the white rook jumps in. Ooh, Magnus reacts immediately, but that
immediate response.
That square was needed for the black knight, potentially.
Well, just like that. There's an opening in the defenses here
and
for Magnus
bar
Carlsen.
Indicates that there's a big move in this position, David.
Wow.
That was a big jump.
A big jump. Apparently something concrete here. It's not easy to understand. The computer is suggesting the move G5. That could not really be taken since the white rook would jump in. But G5, the black pawn would have pushed. Maybe the black position would have been looser. Very difficult to comprehend that decision, that move from the computer. I think long-term, white is still doing very well. So this miss from Fabiano, not a bad decision.
And logically, it makes sense because of what you were talking about in terms of black's plan. I wanted to jump the knight to A5. Okay, I've eliminated that square from myself. The only other available square to go forward, obviously guarded by the rook for the time being, but now defended by my own pawn, would be that B4 square. Okay, A3, I'm going to take that away from you as well. Knight is still kind of stuck where it is.
Okay, I think I understand why white had this strong move. G5 would have destabilized the black bishop, and after the white bishop had moved, the white knight could have come and tried to trap this black bishop. Again, it's on the board. Magnus is going for the H-pawn push, but that's not going to help. Fabiano now has a winning advantage, apparently.
And maybe this is a second opportunity to go for this exact idea, the concrete line. A very counterintuitive move where you put your own pawn on a dark square, get it fixed there, force Magnus to push F5, blocking that file. But because of the tactical variance of the bishop moving forward, hitting the knight, destabilization of the pieces, everything works. But G5, he needs to find this, David. Does he do it?
I don't think he does.
Oh.
I don't think it's so obvious here after the black pawn moves that the black bishop is actually suddenly a bit loose. That long term actually helps black. Apart from the immediate knockout, I think more likely we'll see the white knight jump into the center. That's the most human move here. There we go. He goes for another weak pawn. A second pawn would mark a real decisive advantage. Hard to defend as well for Magnus, unless he goes totally passive right now.
Still a stronger position here for Fabiano. You saw that ever so slight shake of the head there from Magnus Carlsen. He is very uncomfortable as we dip below 1 minute on the clock for him in 10-second increment. Both players up in the triple digits. Magnus Carlsen just hovering around 100 beats per minute when it comes to that heart rate. But Fabiano, you can see he smells blood in the water. He can feel it.
He really can. And, oh, Magnus indecision. He was moving for his rook.
He's got no time on the clock either. Only 30 seconds. Rook C8 is just such a difficult move to make. You're so unhappy playing it, but Magnus doesn't have an option. The only way to defend the pawn.
Oh, so ugly, that move. Question mark given. Again, the key idea is for white to bang, break through with G5, remove the defender of that bishop. But if he hasn't seen it once, he hasn't seen it twice, will he see it the third time? Fabiano, at some point, he will need a second avenue, a second way in. He's got a beautiful rook on the 7th rank, beautiful minor pieces now. Fabiano, he's got to sense it.
Oh, and he doesn't. He misses it one more time, lines up the rook against the black bishop, and now Magnus stops the threat.
Oh, he actually found the idea, Fabiano. He was setting up G5, but now it's been prevented. And yeah, it's not easy to push through. The black rook cuts across the 4th rank, meaning the white pawns can't push. How to make progress? Chance is gone.
So much about the clock. Many more chances will come, is the feeling that one gets right now, given both players under a minute. How does Fabi find a way for that second rook into the game?
That was so difficult, though. I've got to say, G5, giving up a pawn, playing through the attack when the queens are off is quite a rare concept. But Magnus with a really clutch move there, really instructive. He might just continue marching his king forward, given the time. What to do next, how to improve. He's maxed out his pieces, though, Fabiano. All of his pieces on perfect squares. And there we go.
Traffic jam in the middle of the board right now, just utter congestion. As he slides the rook up, Magnus says, okay, immediately I'll attack that.
Very instructive. He wants the exchange on his terms. Rook takes rook now, improves the black knight. And actually, if there were a trade of pawns on the f-file, the black rook might later get attacking chances against the white king.
Wow, this is getting very tricky now because you will have to go for pawns on the left flank. Magnus coming in for the white king. Is this about to become a race again?
Yeah, and the clock situation's turned against Fabiano. He was spent so long looking for that winning move. He knew it was there, but under 20 seconds.
Make a move.
It's not too often that you see his chair shaking, and in this moment he is 10 seconds, now down to single digits, searching for a resource.
This is turning around now. He's coming back to defense. Momentum is shifting.
Oh, that feels like a step in the wrong direction. The knight only came from the e3 square earlier. Now it's gone away from the action. Magnus is going to bring his king. Typical Magnus, activating the king in endgames, pawn trade.
I don't know how he keeps doing this. In worse position, stabilizes and then punishes. He's going ahead with the king. He's creating a mating net. Notice how all of Fabi's pieces are on the left flank, the king left alone. And all of Magnus's army is coming through. Rook g8 check, luckily is defended by the bishop on c4.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the white bishop defending this square, black has a huge attack. But I think Fabiano now wants to pull the brake a little bit and just get the knights off. That would remove some of the risk.
Can't hit the brakes too hard, though, just because the clock continues to tick away.
Yeah, but that was exactly him doing that. He knows that the position slipped out of his hand, and he needs to make sure this doesn't go from bad to worse.
Very important that the black bishop cannot go back and sit on this square, caging in the white rook, because we would see the white bishop kick away the black rook, some sacrifices. The white c-pawn is still a potential queen. So very important that white's rook is still free. Magnus still, he's the one defending. He's still a pawn down.
You put that black rook a way to find itself on the G line, we're talking about a completely different game. But notice how it's almost impossible for him to free itself with that c7 pawn tying itself down. For Magnus Carlsen, how does he get the rook into the game? I don't think there's a way.
a4 would be a typical Magnus move here, just locking down pawns, locking down an enemy pawn on a dark square. He's reaching for his own pawns, though. He loves pushing those corner pawns h5 instead. That's a waiting move. Oh, 3 results still possible. It's one of those endgames. Rook's off the board, it's a draw. Rook's on the board, anything can happen.
And maybe this is the moment that Fabi pushes his own a-pawn, making sure that Magnus doesn't get the option to go a4 next. He starts with the other side himself.
Okay, but that's a target. That white pawn sits on a dark square long term. Who can hold their nerve?
The rook can't move, the king is optimized, the bishop is optimized. Almost feels like every move makes Magnus' position slightly worse, slightly less ideal.
If Magnus has a dead rook, can we kill the rook on the other side by sliding our bishop back to b6? He doesn't go that way.
Yeah, there would have been tactics there. The white bishop could have hit the black rook. When it moved away, the rook could have taken a bishop and tried to punch through with the pawn. There were tactics so he defends the other direction, but now black's pawns are loose. And now the black rook is coming. Tanya called for it. The black rook wants to reach this square to go for an attack against the white king.
Yeah, just get it on the G line and you don't care about the pawns. Take the pawns, I'm coming for your king is what Magnus is saying. And this is Fabi rushing to defend. If rook e7, he wants to go rook to d7, challenge on the 7th rank, not allowing a check.
Yeah, and even that might be a draw after a rook trade. The black bishop can prevent any promotions, but Magnus might want more. Magnus's bishop might move out the way. The black rook is coming.
He does want more. He doesn't go for that rook trade option. Gets the king closer to that weak pawn on the H line. And Fabi now attacks the bishop.
Which will move.
You can bring it forward. Keep it on the diagonal that it is. And the rook's coming in.
Yeah, very important that the black rook covers some squares. And Magnus is taking a bit of a risk here. You've got to watch out for bishop. Rook takes bishop sacrifices, pushing through the pawn. In conjunction with the bishop, but doesn't seem to quite work yet.
You could also start targeting that f5 pawn with your bishop. The rook already lined up. Drop that bishop back. I want to pick up all the pawns that I can. f4. Oh, it gets so tricky, this position. He comes back with the king. Wants to give a check on e2.
We should say this is an easier position to play with black. Like, you have pawns to push, you have pawns to grab. White's rook is somewhat clumsy. Which direction does it go? Magnus is pushing. He's got another pawn in his sights.
He's making so much inroads in this game, right? Slowly and steadily, he's improved his king, he's improved the pawns, he's improved his rook. The bishop blocking the white rook.
How many times have we seen him win this type of position as well?
Countless.
Bishop e2 check. King slides out of the way.
Going to take that f5 pawn.
Pawn, yeah, but he will drop his f pawn.
And now if Magnus wants to draw, he just goes rook f8.
Oh,
That's it, that is a draw for right there.
here we go.
And I think at this point, Fabi's happy to bail out.
Very happy, very relieved. I think Fabiano, he's going to grab this pawn later. Maybe wise to, there we go, block the black king first. We'll see a blockade and fireworks. Maybe he draws a fair result, but Fabiano with missed opportunities. How many of those do you get against Magnus Carlsen in a match? And there we go, it's a handshake.
Wow, would you believe it? I mean, Fabi was throwing haymakers for a majority of that game, had Magnus Carlsen against the ropes, but still Magnus finds a way to keep himself alive, and perhaps a missed opportunity, an inaccuracy here or there from Fabiano means through 2 games, they're evened up at 1-1.